that was the moment I realized, like, shit, I cannot keep working the same way that I used to work in corporate. That's not how this is going to work as an entrepreneur. So critical to take the time in your life to vision and to plan how you want to live and how you want to create.
What rejuvenates and reconnects to my soul so then I can continue to work, continue to be productive and be consistent in my habits and routine.
Because we live in a capitalistic society that's driven in the industrial age and productivity to be more productive, to do more shit, to learn something, to always be listening. Hi, I'm Briony and I'm overcoming workaholism. Such a hard word to say.
Hi, I'm Dalaney and I'm also overcoming workaholism.
Workaholism, such a weird word. Anyway, we wanted to share this episode because we know as entrepreneurs and creators, you love what you do and you're passionate about what you do and you could just do it all day for free, 24/7. And that is not a life and that is not a reality that we want anyone to live. So we're going to share in this episode some of our strategies and our journey to overcoming workaholism and creating a balanced, beautiful life that fulfills you.
So good.
Briony. Yeah. So
when did you realize that you might be a workaholic?
I came out of corporate. I worked as a top tier lawyer. We worked like 7 a.m. to 11 most nights, 10 maybe, a lot. And when in my first year of business, I was like, pedal to the metal, let's freaking go. And I worked the same way. And how I actually knew was leaving a corporate environment and I was at my co-working space and I would be the first there and the last to leave. And that was not normal, right? Everyone's entrepreneurs. Most people are out of there by 5 and most people don't need the early access like 24/7, like, you know, where you pay extra for it. And yeah, that's basically when it hit me. And I was actually in literally like a server, like an IT computer room thing. And I just started crying and I just started like melting down because I was so burnt out. Because I'd been running myself the way that I used to run in corporate. And the interesting thing was in corporate, there wasn't as many pressures in a different way. I wasn't learning that many new skills. You know, it was totally different to how I now understand entrepreneurship, which requires such more creative energy for me, such more like learning energy, generative energy, serving others energy, totally different to when I could clock in and clock out a little bit at a job that I knew how to do. So that was the moment I realized, like, shit, I cannot keep working the same way that I used to work in corporate. That's not how this is going to work as an entrepreneur. And then my habits had to start changing, which we're going to talk about in this episode. Dalaney, how about you?
Mine was probably burning out at a very young age, like maybe like 25, I think, is when I fully hit like complete peak burnout. And I was like, I am so young. I have so much energy. Why am I now mentally and physically absolutely exhausted? And what I realized was actually I was an older student. So I started uni a little late and 2 years late, like when I was like 20, I went back to uni. And I realized from that moment, I felt like I was behind. So I studied 2 degrees. I worked full time while I was also at uni and then had another part-time job on top of that. So I was doing 2 degrees, full-time job and a part-time job, all because I felt like I was falling behind. And that 7 days a week work ethic stuck with me all the way in after uni, where I then joined the startup world and the corporate world and had startups on the go and a full-time job on the go. And it was just non-stop 7 days a week on top of training like I was a fucking athlete, all just building up this intense stress and overwhelm for my nervous system, my body, my brain, all of it. And yeah, 25, cooked, absolutely done. All from that intense energy.
Yeah, there we go. It was super interesting. We went on a holiday recently and we love a holiday, right? A good holiday, not just like some shitty thing. We love planning a good holiday. And it was interesting that so much of the conversation, actually a significant amount of the conversation, was about a lot of us who were entrepreneurs who had basically pedaled to the metal, burned out, experienced the massive pain of it, and then decided we want to live better lives. An interesting thing I notice about all of us is we're passionate, we're learners, we're innately driven, and it was this whole new way of operating where it's like, cool, we can't use that operating system anymore because we've all experienced so much pain from that way. And I think how a lot of people approach this conversation, and I think is so personal. I think one of the most important things, someone asked me yesterday out for lunch, she was like, do you and Dalaney plan and vision about your life? I was like, yes, all the time. Right. So,
Constantly.
and I think that's a really, really important thing to note, is that it's so critical to take the time in your life to vision and to plan how you want to live and how you want to create, because otherwise you probably will work, because we live in a capitalistic society that's driven in the industrial age and productivity to be more productive, to do more shit, to learn something, to always be listening. So everything, our model was set up to do that, hit more goals, hit more. And so to go against that, I think you have to spend conscious time and effort to go, okay, well, if not that, what am I subscribing to? What's the values? What's the actual everyday of how I want to live my life? How many hours do I want to work a day, right? I know I can personally work a lot. I'm clear on that. But it's how much do I want to work, and at what pace, and how many expectations. So I think that's a really important thing that, Dee, I know that we do a lot in our life. We're always having conversations about how we want to live and who we want to be and who we're becoming. And so if you don't have a vision for how you want to spend your time and your weekends and your holidays and your life, then I think it's very difficult to continue listening to this episode, even because none of what we'll talk about in here really matters that much unless you've done that, right? Yeah, so I think that's just if you have anything else to add on that, I think that's just a really important piece to note, is that, yeah, we can get so much validation from work. So you need to have something else at stake and something that's pulling you forwards on that as well.
Yeah, it's without a vision, you fall for the default. And the default is in the entrepreneurial world, hustle culture and more, and 7 days a week and 24/7 and staying up late and people flexing how little sleep they got, and so many weird paradigms that you might default to unconsciously. The other one is also breaking the paradigm of what may have been mirrored to you from your parents. My parents were both workaholics. They both worked incredibly hard. I'm very grateful for them, for what they've done and what they enabled me to do in terms of getting education and all that stuff. And I mirrored them as well. So for my early years in life, it was also breaking that there's more to life than work. There's more to life than your career. And it's also really important to then create that vision. How do you want to spend your life? And then also underneath it all, some people fall to a default of I just want to make more money, or I want to have an impact. Okay, to do what? Particularly around the money front. People are I just want to make 10K per month. It's great. For what purpose? What are you going to do with that? It's I didn't think that far. So again, that real vision, that real clarity on how you want to spend your time, and then create your work around that.
Yeah, and I think something for me, one of my best ways that I've managed my workaholism per se is actually through planning. I love planning. I'm quite future focused, so I know this is Dee will offer other strategies as well. But for me, my most precious time is on a Sunday, and that's my day, and that's Dee's day. And often we don't do that much together even on that day. We're both in our own realities, and we're both resetting for the week. And a student the other week asked, how do you time manage? How do you plan? And I was like, well, when's your planning time? And she's like, planning time. I was like, not your doing time, right? Not in the moment that your week started and everything's underway and everything's coming at you. It's the planning time. So for me, Sunday planning is my ceremony. It is my ritual. It is my time with myself. And I have a specific system that is not just about the tasks that I'm going to do that week in business, but it's about my life, right? And so I have this kind of process that's, okay, is my self-care taken care of? Do I have enough workouts scheduled this week? Yes. Cool, right? And I'm giving you my system, but this is also based on my values. So just take that in mind. And then, okay, do I have some self-care? If I got some energy work or some healing work or a massage or something that's going to nourish my soul, walk in nature, a spa, right? Yep. Okay, cool. Scheduled. You're picking up my theme here. I don't leave this shit to accident, right? Do I have enough social connection? I'm well aware of how many social interactions I need each week to feel fulfilled and connected to humanity. Are those scheduled? Yep. Cool. Perfect. Right? Am I excited for the weekend? And then I have a little zoomed out look. How's my year looking? How's our holidays? Have we got enough going on? Like Dee and I think we've got trips booked like an Airbnb booked until Jan 2025, like our favorite trip. So we have all these things in our life to look forward to. And I spend conscious time creating those every single week. And I know, I can admit, hand on my heart, if I did not allocate that 3 hours a Sunday to do any of that, I would not have the life I live. And so that is my commitment to myself. Like, that's the time you make those other priorities happen. Right now, when I take care of those, actually works really easy to take care of because all of that's scheduled, and then I work around that. So it's almost the antithesis. Whereas I think a lot of people work and then do that. Mine is I do that and then I put work around it. So that's something for me that I think is, probably saved me from ever burning out again. Basically, is that 3 hours on a Sunday.
And as well, some of you may be listening and you may be quite like me or were like me, or maybe you are like who I once was, which was you may have attached yourself to an identity that you are not organized. Now, what I've learned over the years, and I used to believe that as well, but then I realized, like everything in life, things get almost categorized into these identities when in fact they're just skill sets that we haven't even bothered to try and learn. So for me, getting organized started with understanding that it's a skill set, and then understanding that rather than jumping on to trying to be an Olympic athlete at organization, is just starting out super small. So I remember I'm having this beautiful flashback of when I was in my early 20s and trying to be more organized, be more structured, really prioritize my life and my health. And it started with me having a post-it note stack and a pen. And what I did is rather than try to plan my year, my month, my week, my goal, is I was just like, what is just 2 things I want to do today? And it might be as simple as go to gym, journal. That's it, self-care. And it just started as a to-do list. And then as I started mastering that, then I started, planning a day. And then I might even plan a week, 2 weeks, a year, a month, a couple months. And it's all about practicing that expansion and being able to hold time. Time and money are directly correlated, by the way. If you want to earn more money, you need to learn how to hold more time. Billionaires think in decades just to plant that seed. What am I going to do for the next 10 years, right? So really know that this is a skill set. Know you've got to get some reps in. And of course, you're not going to have this beautiful calculated, calendared, perfect year off the bat. And know where you're at, be honest with yourself, and then get the reps in. Really practice and build up your capacity to hold time.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. As you were speaking, it reminded me I used to do daily planners and then weekly planners. In fact, I even think we have untapped templates, right? And then monthly planners and then quarterly plans. And now I think annually, 5 years, whatever. And that has taken practice and time. So I think that's, it's a skill, and you get faster at it and you get better at it as well. I said that the other day. It's like my 3 hours on a Sunday. Sometimes I can do it in half an hour because I've done that process so many freaking times. Dee, one thing, obviously you guys can probably tell, I'm the planner. I love planning. Dee's organized as well. He's working on a lot of that, but me love planning. So one thing I admire you for, Dee, and one thing I think you're really disciplined at, something I'm still massively working on and also need a lot less of than you per se, but actually it's the ability to unplug, right? We have these things attached to our hands 24/7 now. And it's something I've admired since I met you and continue to see your kind of practices and disciplines around, is how you unplug, right? We work with customers. We have online presence like social media. We work with students and customers through Slack. We are constantly connected. So I would love you to share, or, do you have any kind of things that you've learned and boundaries and practices around actually unplugging and disconnected because we're so overstimulated, you know?
So how I then applied this into my whole life actually started when I was training in CrossFit. And I had an incredible trainer in Wellington who not only would prioritize the what's called a working set, it could be like 10 reps of a squat or something, but then he would prioritize that 2-minute break and exactly what we were doing in between. Now, I would sit there, sitting on the ground, folded over, just, waiting for the 2 minutes to come by. And the very first thing he did was pulled my shoulders back and then said, double inhale, double exhale. And really calming down my entire nervous system and really centering into myself again. And then he said, D, the 2 minutes is not about rest. The 2 minutes is about rejuvenation. And that's when my brain just went kapow. And I realized in all other areas of life, like including work, that coming home at night and watching a movie and binging whatever, Netflix or whatever, is not rejuvenation. It is rest. And that's when I realized that I really need to start prioritizing what rejuvenates and reconnects to my soul so then I can continue to work, continue to be productive and be consistent in my habits and routine. So that's when I went on this quest on trying to really understand what truly rejuvenates me. Now, what I'm about to share is what rejuvenates me, but I encourage you to find your own. So thinking about the 3 pillars of who we are, our body, our mind, and our soul, and really connecting to which are the things that rejuvenate me the most. Now, I'll start with the soul, the tippy top. It's usually disconnection from technology, getting in nature, getting in some water, climbing a mountain. That is one of the most rejuvenating things you can possibly do. Then, of course, there's the mind, meditation, less stimulation, digital detoxing, that type of thing. And, of course, the body. Remember to stretch, team. Mobility is key. And really limbering up, because the body doesn't know the difference between work stress and physical stress. So you really have to ensure you're giving your body that time to truly calm down. And then, of course, hydration. Stay hydrated. Always stay hydrated.
I love that. Yeah. And I always appreciate how disciplined you are around, when you say you don't take calls before 11 a.m., that's because your mornings are so important, and you have these really beautiful, clear boundaries for yourself, right? And I think that's important to talk about is, sometimes people set boundaries and it's like, oh, I don't do this and I can't do that and I, won't do this. It's actually like, what is the deepest act of self-love you can give yourself? And I know for you, D, it's like 11 a.m., no calls before 11 a.m. It just doesn't work for you, right? It doesn't set yourself up for a good day. And for me, one of my biggest probably things has been like learning to know those parameters. Like I don't have more than probably 3 social things a week, like 1 coffee, maybe 1 evening out, maybe 1 thing in the weekend or 2. And that's me. That's enough of my social commitment calendar. And I don't overstack it or think, oh, I have to go to that catch up because I said I would. It's like really a deep self-awareness and love of like what sets me up, like what is the weeks that I have my best weeks and why. And to get to that point where we have such self-awareness of that, I think you and I have done a lot of reflection. We've made a lot of mistakes. We've finished a lot of weeks on a Friday and gone, I am cooked. And then we reflect and we go, why are we cooked? Oh, because we absolutely gunned it on Monday, Tuesday, and by Wednesday we were tired, and then we kept going into that social thing, and we reflect. And so we've made a lot of mistakes in our operating systems, and we've hit the wall so many times and then gone, we can do better, right? And then actually decided, okay, these are my parameters. And so I think even thinking more on a weekly basis, like reflecting each week and going, okay, this week was awesome because I hydrated. I did 4 workouts. I only did 2 social catch-ups. I know, D, your social quota is less than mine, right? I did this 3 hours deep, whatever it is, you get what I'm saying. But the gist is you have to deeply know yourself to be able to set those parameters. And I think what you were touching on there was beautiful as well, was like, you have to know yourself at mind, body, soul level, what really rejuvenates you. Maybe it's catching up with people, maybe it's going to the beach. And are you setting enough of that each week? And I think this becomes like your your guiding principles, because one thing we've learned in our relationship is we have different capacities for work and different capacities for style of work. It was an area of conflict for us for quite a while. Like Dee would be like, oh, I need a holiday. And I'd be like, I need a holiday too. And 48 hours later, I'd be like, okay, amazing, let's go again. And Dee would be like, what? Like, I thought we were going to have a week off. Yeah. So we've had such a journey around like really communicating, and with so much like self-love and awareness around, okay, I need this and I need this, and how are we going to keep honoring that, right? And every day asking that. But that takes, it's quite a reflective practice, right? Around like, what made this week great? Where did I go wrong this week? Yeah.
And it's almost the paradigm of like self-parenting, in a way of, you wouldn't overstimulate a toddler because you know they're going to be tired later. So you kind of be like, okay, that's enough iPad time. But as adults, we just let ourselves get away with so much shit and so much overworking that we just cook ourselves. We're exhausted. We've got no bandwidth for our partners. Probably not. We don't have kids yet, but no bandwidth for children, no bandwidth for friends. You've just overstimulated yourself. So one of my golden rules is 80% full. Like, it is easier. This is a fun fact that connects to electric vehicles. But the fastest point to charge your vehicle is from 0 to 80, and then it's super slow from 80 to 100. So when you burn out completely that 100%, it takes like 3 times as much rejuvenation to get yourself back to 100. But if you work capacity to about 80%, 80%, 80%, then your rejuvenation practices can be half. You can end work at 4 p.m, go for a walk in the park, and boom, you're ready to go for tomorrow, because you haven't completely cooked yourself the whole 100%. So the 80% rule is super important. And again, it takes a lot of time, a lot of self-awareness, a lot of reflection on your day, on your work week, on your work month, on your year, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah.
Bryce,
I think,
something... You go.
Yeah. I just think that's so important, is to not underestimate, like Dee and I sharing from a place where we've really like hit the wall so many times. And would you say with burnout, I mean, people throw this word around, what does it mean? Like, we both shared original journeys of ours where we like really hit that moment, but then we've also had weeks where we're like, that was way too big, way too much, not again. And that is like, as long as it's not like you're going to get it all perfect, right? You're still going to over push yourself and overdrive, and you always want to be looking at the root cause of why you do that. But it's also just a little bit of compassion. Like, some weeks are full on, and that's okay. It's like, how do you get more macro about it and be like, am I generally supporting myself? What were you going to say, Deb?
I was going to say, one of the favorite insights a lot of our clients get in some of our more personal growth trainings is around the distinction of hyper and hypo. Do you want to speak into that around the nervous system?
Yeah, I think majority of my career in life, I was just hyper, like dysregulated. Like, so hyper and hypo is around your nervous system, and it's like being offline, being dysregulated. And one of the, when you're a workaholic, or if you identify as that, you just push through basically, right? So maybe you have a coffee or whatever, and you just keep going. And what happens when you do that, when your body's communicating you to stop and to slow, or, you start to get less creative and a bit more reactive or whatever, or emotional, and your body's like, alarm bells going, you might be going into hyper, which is when it's like you're getting dysregulated in your nervous system out of what's called the zone of tolerance, which is like this beautiful operating place. And maybe you're just like reacting and opening Slack and opening this and nothing productive or focused is actually getting done, right? And then there's hypo, where you might be getting slower, put some TV on, eat some food, eat some more food, and it's just like lower and lower. And for me, the journey has been around awareness of where am I operating from, and then a deep commitment to myself that I only want to create from a regulated place, meaning that zone of tolerance, because I communicate better, I'm more effective, I come up with cool ideas, I'm more efficient, it's more fun for me, I'm less stressed when I'm in that zone of tolerance. And I have a lot of little habits and things all day to keep myself at that place, right? But again, it's that like full awareness. And I think when you're experiencing workaholism or pushing through or whatever, you will most likely be doing probably 90% of what you're doing from a really dysregulated place. And the true outcomes, the real optimal results where you just boom, 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 highly effective, really creative, beautiful output is when you're regulated. And so, yeah, I think
that's and said another way, it's flow state, right? Is that finding that sweet spot where you're flowing. And like you said, every single thing we're doing all day is an attempt to either go up or down. And one of the best exercises you can do is essentially do wake time to sleep time. So in my case, 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. And then simply draw a little line of your energy and just think, okay, when I start the day, where am I? Am I minus or am I plus? You'd be like, oh, when I start the day, I'm probably like a +1. And then I go to the gym and I get up to about a +5. And then I kind of dip before lunch, and then I have lunch, and then I go down even lower, and then I'm done for the day. And then it's like, cool, what do I need to do to manage my nervous system so I can stay in this nice flow state in the middle of just plus or minus above the zero and just nice flow and really create that consistent state? Because I'm sure many of you have, listened to gurus and all the Instagram tips and tactics. So you need to meditate for an hour a day, and then you do yoga for 3 hours, and then you need to go to the gym, and then you need to socialize. And you're like, wait, we're never going to do anything with this monstrous to-do list. And that's how I used to start my day. Like, I used to tell Briony he can't talk to me till lunch because my morning routine is so long. And it's just ridiculous. But it's not until you realize how you uniquely operate, what you actually need to start your day, what you need is a midday check-in, an afternoon check-in, and then a wind-down period for the evening, and really cultivating that routine depending on the state you want to be in and need to be in.
Yeah. Yeah, so huge. Yeah. There's a couple of other things I think that we do that when we share with people, they're like, wow, that's really smart. One thing that I think we learn from so many mistakes, we would host like live events or challenges or trainings or whatever. And then after, we would be so excited and so freaking like hyped up and like, woo, like, on that energy, adrenaline high, basically, that we would keep going. We'd be like, keep going. And I remember this day so many times. And then 2 days later, we'd be fried. Because we've been operating way too high, too much stress on the adrenals. And even though it was inspiring and exciting, it was just like too high for too long, basically. And so you were talking about that 80% rule, basically. Like, how do you rest before you need it? And I think something we've learned and become extremely disciplined in is, without even probably knowing now, is like, if we go on, I don't know, in May, we're going to Joe Dispenza, right? And so we're going to Switzerland. We're going to 3 days at Joe. And then we're staying in Switzerland for like another 2 days because I know we'll be hyped. We'll have ideas. We'll be ready to, probably want to work, probably want to get back and get some shit done. And, this is me, this is my energy, and get excited. And actually what you need to do is decompress, rest, and then come back into the inspiration. And for me personally, Dee uses this metaphor for me. For me, it feels like a slingshot, right? That's how I feel because I'm excited. I'm inspired. I want to go. Right. And it's not like I'm not letting myself. It's just going, cool. But if you go now, you will kind of pay for it later. So actually, how about we just expand it a little bit longer and then go? And so when we host like challenges and things like that, free challenges, 3-day events, whatever it is, after we always have a decompression day, right? Team retreats, decompression day. Big personal growth events, decompression day. Hosting live trainings or free challenges or even masterclasses, decompression time. Right? And even now I notice something we do, I don't know if you picked this up, but we do our coaching calls for the incubator, the accelerator, like we do them each week, right? Mastery. And then after them, we walk into each other's office and we go, cool, should we go for a walk? And we decompress because we're both excited and we have a million ideas and we've got a million insights and we're like, clients are amazing. And then it's like, you're a little bit, for me, I'm a little bit like, right? And then we just go and we decompress. So we schedule, and now we have a habit of decompression time. And I think for those of you who are, if you're constantly filling your brain, next podcast, next book, next activity, back-to-back schedule, when do you literally decompress, right? So decompression is huge for insights, for energy maintenance, for your adrenals, but actually for letting everything you just learned cement, right? Really, really important practice.
And I think one of the most important mindsets you could get from this conversation is that rest and rejuvenation is work. to really let that click into your workaholic brain is that like having a little 20-minute meditation in the middle of the day is work, is productive, is going to help you then work more. Just to really give your workaholic a carrot, you know, kind of a bait and switch, if you will, of like, haha, we're not going to make that Instagram post, we're going to go for a walk, you know, it's just like bait and switch, reset yourself, and really keeping with that understanding that as a workaholic, you're a highly productive person. You want to keep doing stuff. You want to keep executing and creating output. So how do you then keep that energy, but just choose what's in front of you? Say, for example, Briony and I have a greens smoothie supplement next to our coffee machine. So when we're like, oh, coffee, let's go have a coffee at work, I'm so hyper, I go up there and I go, oh, actually, I'll have that. Because I don't actually need more stimulation. I just need to calm down. Or we have water as well. It's all three. It's water, green, coffee. And it's just a little bait and switch for that workaholic energy sometimes. It's just how do you replace it with a positive thing?
Yeah, I think there's actually a whole episode specifically about making rest your superpower. And it was our feature in Forbes, actually. We did a whole feature in Forbes about holistic entrepreneur and how rest is literally a superpower. When you're early and like as you develop in your career, it's like the thing, that makes you extraordinary, right? Rest and the ability to focus, both super correlated. I think D, you're quite intellectual, D. So D is like super amazing, strategic, intellectual. So when you rest, you get the most incredible ideas and downloads. Or like, not downloads, you wouldn't use that word, but like ideas, right? Downloads. Insights. Yeah. Well, yeah. And then I am quite willful. So if I keep doing, I get exhausted by that. And so when I rest, I refill that tank ready to do more. I'm also more intuitive, right? And both of us quite intuitive, and we connect to source, connect to the universe, do our meditations and processes. That's what fills us like spiritually and on a soul level. And when we allow time for that, I think you get like so many more insights. One thing I've struggled with a lot is discipline. I think if you guys don't know us well, like D and I have had really addictive past. So like D was a smoker, lots of alcohol, all the things.
Drugs.
I had an eating disorder, drugs. Yeah, I had an eating disorder. So we both have addictive past and tendencies that we've done a lot of like trauma and inner work on. But we also know that work can just become one of those. So for me, I leverage a lot of things as well. One is that I think for maybe 3 years now, is it D? We have had an office. For maybe 4 years. We have an office. We don't work from home. We don't work from home. I think I've only taken like 2 calls from home this year. And so we have a dedicated office and a dedicated space. And this has like been a absolute transformational experience for us because your physical environment cues your habits. If your physical environment is set up for work in your office and your desk and things, your brain will subconsciously be thinking about working or, I just go in that room and grab my little laptop and do that little thing, right? Your phone's the same way. So this discipline around physical environments and spaces has been something I think we've worked on a lot. And getting the office has been a huge game changer. And I often leave my laptop at the office as soon as I leave. And I don't need it at home. I've got my phone if anything urgent or whatever.
Such a flex.
Right? Yeah, it's so it's so awesome. And the other thing that I use is Opal. So Opal is, I think I shared it on my socials as well, but Opal is basically just an app that will lock you out of and limit you on certain apps, basically. So you can set your time, like from 6:30 to 8:30 a.m. I have Spotify only available. And then 8:30 to 3:30, I've got no social media but all business apps or whatever. It's a game changer for me. D, I feel like you're just like a bit more disciplined than me on that stuff, but I'm a shocker. I'm just like reacting into that shit, and doing a whole bunch of stuff that literally I don't need to be doing. So, is there any other kind of like those little tips that you can think of?
It's really as well like knowing that our identity and our beliefs are some of the strongest driving forces in being a human being. And like you just pointed out, environment is actually number one. So please please have a dedicated workspace at the most, at the least, sorry. And if you can't do that, ensure you're working at cafes, public libraries, co-working spaces. And if you think I can't afford it, my business is this, you can afford it, because I guarantee if you have a dedicated workspace, your productivity and your business will skyrocket. The other thing as well is if you are stuck in something, like there's something on your to-do list that you're just not doing, or you're just overwhelmed, or you just keep making the same loops, the same patterns. You're like, oh my God, I just keep coming to this co-working space and all I do is seem to just write emails or troll LinkedIn or something. You need to change your environment. It's time for a new co-working space. It's time for a new cafe. It's time for a new routine. You need to break the routine and break the environment to create new creative ideas, to change your pattern, to change your loops of however you're working. So super, super important. And then of course, can't go away from identity. You need to really work on some identities and some rules you have around your identity. Like, for example, we do not work at home. That is like an identity and a rule. And when you have rules, it gives you angles to break them, which is really healthy and happy for working. If you go like, oh, I don't work on the weekends, like that might be too broad if you're quite a workaholic, but if you say, I don't work from weekends from home, or I don't work from home. So if it's a Sunday, you're feeling inspired, you want to make some stuff, leave home and go to a cafe, and just setting yourself up with not a boundary like I don't do this, but a creation on how you do want to work. How do you want to work? How do you best want to rejuvenate? How do you best want to, get things done and break those creative loops is really important to set those creative boundaries, or creative habits, I should say.
Yes, so good. Yes, power of environment. So from two Workaholics Anonymous, we hope that you've enjoyed this episode and you find it helpful to give you some new things to think about, some new habits, some new patterns. You deserve to have a beautiful life. Your loved ones will love hanging out with you more, and work is not everything. We know it's freaking awesome and we know you love it because we're entrepreneurs and we love what we create. Why would we do it? But your life really matters and you really matter. So please make yourself a priority. Please take some of these tools and go forward and create a beautiful, expansive version of you and daily practice to be your best self.